continue with the point where we had left in the last video, and that was that the agitation brought to the tree could bring a disaster. Now, what type of disaster? High up in the tree, one bough capsized its load of snow. This fell on the boughs beneath, capsizing them. This process continued, spreading out and involving the whole tree. It grew like an avalanche, and it descended without warning upon the man and the fire was blotted out. Where it had burned was a mantle of fresh and disordered snow. So, what happened was, one of the boughs or the branches of the tree, it was quite disturbed and having a heavy load of snow. So what happened was, it capsized. Its snow started falling on the branch just below it. That branch already had some snow. Now that was also capsized with that snow. Again, from there also the snow little by little had started falling towards the next level of the branches, then again towards the next level of the branches. It seemed as if an avalanche or a storm type of you can say scene was there. So it continued, this process continued till it covered the entire tree. And at the end, what happened, without warning the man and the fire, this whole load of snow along with some branches had fallen upon him. The entire fire had blotted out. There was no sign of any fire that was burnt at that place. There was only traces of snow all over. The man was shocked. It was as though he had just heard his own sentence of death. It seemed as if he had seen his death in front of him, because still his feet was frozen, and his knees, up till the knees, all his feet was frozen. For a moment he sat and stared at the spot where the fire had been. Then he grew very calm. Perhaps the old timer on Sulphur Creek was right. If he had only had a trail mate, he would have been in no danger now. The trail mate could have built the fire. Well, it was up to him to build the fire over again, and this second time there must be no failure. Even if he succeeded, he would almost likely lose some toes. His feet must be badly frozen by now, and there would be some time before the second fire was ready. Now he was, for some time he was in shock, and he stared at that spot where there had been the fire, and now there were no traces of fire burnt over there. After that, what happened was, he became calm, because he remembered what the man at the Sulphur Creek had told him, that it is impossible to travel alone in such a cold. So he thought that if I had a mate with me, a friend with me, he could have helped me to build the fire again. But now I have to work out on my own. So he, the second time, he had to be very careful that there should not be any failure in building the second fire. And he knew that if he, in this attempt of building the second fire, maybe he may lose some of his toes or whatever. And there would be some time before the second fire was ready. Still there was some time. Such were his thoughts, but he did not sit and think them. He was busy all the time, but they were passing through his mind. He made a new foundation for a fire, this time in the open, where no treacherous tree could blot it out. Now, as he was thinking, as we know that he was not a man given to thinking, so he did not waste his time. He was working as the thoughts were coming and going in his mind. So he did what? He was trying to prepare a base for building the second fire, that too in the open, so that no tree could be of any danger to him. Next, he gathered dry grass and tiny twigs from the high water flotsam. He could not bring his fingers together to pull them out, but he was able to gather them by handful. In this way, he got many rotten twigs and bits of green moss that were undesirable, but it was the best he could do. Now he did what? He collected some dry grass and tiny twigs from the high water flotsam, and since his fingers had grown numb, so he could bring only a handful of them. He could not touch each and every grass, twigs or whatever. So, and then he also got bits of green moss, which was not desirable, but this is what he could do his best. He worked methodically, even collecting an armful of the larger branches to be used later when the fire gathered strength, and all the while the dog sat and watched him, a certain yearning blissfulness in his eyes, for it looked upon him as a fire provider, and the fire was slow in coming. Now this man also collected some big branches of trees also, that if the fire would grow, then these branches would help it to remain burning. Now this dog, he was just looking at him anxiously, in the desire that he is the fire provider, he will provide me fire, and the dog was actually anxious because the process was going on slow. When all was ready, the man reached in his pocket for a second piece of birch bark. He knew the bark was there, and though he could not feel it with his fingers, he could hear its crisp rustling as he fumbled for it. Try as he would, he could not clutch hold of it, and all the time in his consciousness was the knowledge that each instant his feet were freezing. This thought tended to put him in panic, but he fought against it and kept calm. Now the man, he moved his hands inside his pocket and tried to feel the birch bark, the second birch bark, and although his hands were numb and he could not feel anything inside his pocket, but he could hear through his ears the crisp rustling of it. He could not clutch that twig, he could not grab it because his fingers could not fold like this. So in his consciousness was the knowledge that each instant his feet were freezing. This thought tended to put him in panic. Now each time whenever it was getting delayed, he felt that his feet were freezing, and because of which he was in panic, but then he tried to keep himself calm. He pulled on his mittens with his teeth and threshed his arms back and forth, beating his hands with all his might against his sides. He did this sitting down, and he stood up to do it, and all the while the dog sat in the snow, its wolf brush of a tail curled around warmly over its 4 feet. Its sharp wolf ears pricked forward intently as it watched the man. Now this man, he with his teeth he removed the mittens from his hands, and he tried to move them here and there and back and forth to bring the warmth in his fingers so that they could not be numb and he could touch anything and that he wanted. Then he stood up also and tried to do some exercise to get the warmth in his body. And while this dog, he was sitting with his wolf brush of the tail curled around his 4 feet, and his ears were just like sharply intently listening and seeing what the man was doing. Now, as the man was beating and threshing his arms, he felt jealous. Jealous with whom? He felt jealous of the dog, that this dog is still warm. He has a thick coat around him. He felt a great surge of envy as he regarded the creature that was warm and secure in its natural covering, because he knew that the coat of that dog was very thick, and this creature was very secure in this cold weather also. After a time, he was aware of the first faraway signals of the sensation in his beaten fingers. The faint tingling grew stronger till it evolved into a stinging ache that was excruciating, but which man hailed with satisfaction. He stripped the mitten from his right hand and fetched forth the birch bark. The exposed fingers were quickly going numb again. Next, he brought out his bunch of sulphur matches, but the tremendous cold had already driven the life out of his fingers. In his effort to separate one match from the others, the whole bunch fell in the snow. So pitiful. Now after some time, when he was doing all this beating and moving his hands like this and beating his hands, he got some tingling effects in his hands. Some warmth started coming back to his hands. So he removed the mitten from his right hand and he took out the birch bark. Then he looked for his sulfur matchsticks, but immediately the hands, they started turning numb. So in order to separate one matchstick from the other, as he was doing this process, the bunch of the matches fell on the snow. He tried to pick it out of the snow but failed. The dead fingers could neither touch nor clutch. Now he tried to pick that matchbox, but his fingers had grown numb. They could not even grasp anything from that snow. He was very careful. He drove the thought of his freezing feet and nose and cheeks out of his mind, devoting his whole soul to the matches. He watched using the sense of vision in place of that of touch, and when he saw his fingers on each side the bunch, he closed them. That is, he willed to close them, for the wires were drawn, and the fingers did not obey. He pulled the mitten on the right hand and beat it fiercely against his knee. Then with both mittened hands he scooped the bunch of matches along with much snow into his lap. Yet he was no better off. Now since he could not feel anything with his hands, he tried to clasp the bunch of the matchsticks but could not do. So what he did was, he again put his, the freezing of his feet or the freezing of his nose and cheeks, he removed all these thoughts away immediately. And he concentrated only on taking the match box. So he did what? He put the mittens back into his both hands, and he tried to move them around the bunch, the bundle of that matchstick. As the two fingers were around the matchstick bundle, he tried to close the fingers, but he could not do, because they were already numb, because the fingers could not obey him. And but after some effort, when he picked the bundle of that matchstick, some snow also came along with him, and the bundle was thrown into his lap. After some manipulation, he managed to get the bunch between the heels of his mittened hands. In this fashion, he carried it to its mouth. The ice crackled and snapped when by a violent effort he opened his mouth. He drew the lower jaw in, curled the upper lip out of the way, and scraped the bunch with his upper teeth in order to separate a match. He succeeded in getting one, which he dropped on his lap. He was no better off. He could not pick it up. Then he devised a way. He picked it up with his teeth and scratched it on his leg. 20 times he scratched before he succeeded in lighting it. As it flamed, he held it with his teeth to the birch bark, but the burning brimstone went up his nostrils and into his lungs, causing him to cough spasmodically. The match fell into the snow and went out. Courageous man, we can say. He did what? He did some manipulation. He got the bunch between the heels of his hands like this. Then he took it towards his mouth and he tried to curl his upper lip in order to separate one matchstick from there. One matchstick he could draw immediately, and it fell into his lap. Now he could not pick it up. So he did what? With the help of his teeth, he took the this matchstick. Then he started striking it against his legs. 20 times he had to strike it against his legs in order to get some fire from it. Now then it lighted, and as it lighted, he brought it towards the birch bark. But this burning sensation towards his teeth, that burn of that match, had entered his nostrils and entered into his lungs, which caused him to cough loudly. And so the match fell from his mouth and it immediately went out. The old timer on Sulphur Creek was right. He thought in the moment of controlled despair that ensued, after 50 below, a man should travel with a partner. He beat his hands but failed in exciting any sensation. Now again and again it came to his mind that the man at the Sulphur Creek was right, and a man should not travel in a cold which is below 50. He should have some partner with him. Now he tried to beat his hands and get the warmth back, but all was a failure. Suddenly he bared both hands, removing the mittens with his teeth. He caught the whole bunch between the heels of his hands. His arm muscles, not being frozen, enabled him to press the hand heels tightly against the matches. Then he scratched the bunch along his leg. It flared into flames, 70 sulphur matches at once. There was no wind to blow them out. He kept his hat to one side to escape the strangling fumes and held the blazing bunch to the birch bark. As he so held it, it became aware of the sensation in his hand. His flesh was burning. He could smell it. Deep down below the surface, he could feel it. The sensation developed into pain that grew acute, and still he endured it, holding the flame of the matches clumsily to the bark that would not light readily because his own burning hands were in the way, absorbing most of the flame. So difficult was his struggle. Here he did what? He did not give in. He started to struggle again. So he did what? He took the whole bundle in the heels with the help of his this arms, because his forearms were not frozen. Forearms, this upper arm was not frozen. So with the help of his arms, he tried to catch the bundle and bring it here. And he took this entire bundle of the match and struck it against his leg. All the 70 matches which were present in that bunch, they all started lightening. A high flame grew. But as he moved his head against that flame so that he may not get cough again, and as he moved it towards the birch bark was not ready to be lightened up, but he felt some burning sensation. It was actually his hand that was burning before. Because of it, his flesh was burning. He felt the deep pain inside. It was an acute pain, but he tolerated it. He wanted that somehow the fire should lit up. At last, when he could endure no more, he jerked his hands apart. Now, as the birch bark was not ready to be lit up and he could not bear the pain, then he left it out. The blazing matches fell sizzling into the snow, but the birch bark was alight. Now here the blazing matches, all the 70 matches, they fell into the snow, but at that time the birch bark had alighted. He began laying dry grasses and tiniest twigs on the flame. Now he started putting all those dry grasses and twigs that he had bought. He could not pick and choose, for he had to lift the fuel between the heels of his hands. Small pieces of rotten wood and green moss clung to the twigs, and he bit them off as well as he could with his teeth. He cherished the flame carefully and awkwardly. It meant life, and it must not perish. The withdrawal of blood from the surface of body now made him begin to shiver, and he grew more awkward. A large piece of green moss fell squarely on the little fire. He tried to poke it out with his fingers, but his shivering frame made him poke too far, and it disrupted the nucleus of the little fire. The burning grasses and tiny twigs separating and scattering. He tried to poke them together again, but in spite of the tenseness of the effort, his shivering got away with him, and the twigs were hopelessly scattered. Each twig gushed a puff of smoke and went out. The fire provider had failed. As he looked apathetically about him, his eyes chanced on the dog sitting across the ruins of the fire from him, in the snow, making restless, hunching movements, slightly lifting one forefoot and the other, shifting its weight back and forth on them with wistful eagerness. Now what happened was, since the birch bark had lighted up, so he started putting some grasses and the twigs that he had collected, but he had to do with the help of his heels because there was no movement in the hands also. And he tried to remove the green moss which was stuck to the grasses and all. So with the help of his teeth he was trying to remove those green mosses because that would destroy the fire. He cherished the flame. He wanted to have the warmth of that flame so that the you can see the frozen legs could get some warmth. After that, some time, because on the surface of his body some blood had gone back, there was no blood circulation in the front of his body, so he was feeling a shivering type of his body was shaking in cold shiver. And then he saw that a large piece of green moss had squarely fallen into the fire. He tried to poke it out, but in that effort what happened was the entire these grasses and twigs, they all had scattered away from that fire. He tried to poke them together, but nothing happened, and they all had scattered on the snow and they all went off with a puff of smoke. That means the fire that he had built had almost gone away. Now in his hopeless effort, he saw that the dog was sitting quietly and making some movements, moving his foreleg and back leg, the hind legs, moving here and there, and then making restless movements. The sight of the dog put a wild idea into his head. He remembered the tale of the man caught in a blizzard, who killed a steer and crawled inside the carcass and so was saved. He would kill the dog and bury his hands in the warm body until the numbness went out of them. Then he could build another fire. He spoke to the dog, calling it to him. But in his voice was a strange note of fear that frightened the animal, who had never known the man to speak in such way before. Something was the matter, and its suspicious nature sensed danger. It knew now what danger, but somewhere, somehow, in its brains arose an apprehension of the man. It flattened its ears down at the sound of the man's voice, and its restless hunching movements and liftings and shiftings of its 4 feet became more pronounced. But it would not come to the man. He got on his hands and knees and crawled towards the dog. This unusual posture again excited suspicion, and the animal sidled mincingly away. So what happened was, this man had an idea looking at the dog. He had heard a story that when a man felt very cold, he killed a steer and then he hid himself into its carcass and got himself warm. So he thought that why not kill this dog, and then I will put my hands and legs into it, and when they are warm I will build another fire. So he started speaking to the dog. Now this dog had never seen the man speaking to him in such a way, because this man had spoken some of the sweet words in order to call the dog towards him. Now the dog had never seen this man speaking to him in such kind manner. So the dog had an instinct that there was some danger. And what type of danger the dog did not know, but it had some suspicion. Now this man crawled towards the dog on his knees. Since it crawled in such a way, his movement was also strange. The dog immediately moved back from that man. The man sat up in the snow for a moment and struggled for calmness. Then he pulled on his mittens by means of his teeth and got upon his feet. He glanced down at first in order to assure himself that he was really standing up, for the absence of sensation in his feet left him unrelated to the earth. His erect position in itself started to drive the webs of suspicion from the dog's mind, and when he spoke peremptorily with the sound of whip lashes in his voice, the dog rendered its customary elegance and came to me. As it came within reaching distance, the man lost his control. His arms flashed out to the dog, and he experienced genuine surprise when he discovered that his hands could not clutch, that there was neither bend nor feeling in the fingers. He had forgotten for the moment that they were frozen, and they were freezing more and more. All this happened quickly, and before the animal could get away, he encircled its body with his arms. He sat down in the snow and in this fashion held the dog while it snarled and whined and struggled. Now the man, he stood up on the snow. He first of all put his mittens in his fingers with the help of his teeth. Then he stood up, and he was surprised to see to look at himself that am I really standing, because he could not feel the sensation in his feet. And his erect position and the way he was standing, they were enough that the dog thought that I was under a suspicion. It is not such a thing. The man is standing in himself. And when this man started speaking to him in the sound of the whip lashes as they used to beat the dog immediately knew that this man has no other wicked idea. So the dog started coming towards that man. Now as the dog came to a reaching distance, the man lost his control. He reached his hands towards the dog, but he could not bend his fingers like I am bending here. He could not bend his fingers, or he could not do any movement with his fingers. He had forgotten the moment, because at that moment he had just forgotten that his fingers as well as his legs, everything is freezing and he feels no sensation. Before the animal could get away from there, the man had put his hands around the dog in such a way, and the dog was in between. So the dog started to snarl, roar and do anything, but the man had held him tightly. But it was all he could do, hold its body encircled in its arms and sit there. He realized that he could not kill the dog. There was no way to do it. With his helpless hands, he could neither draw nor hold his sheath knife, nor throttle the animal. He realized it, and it plunged wildly away with tail between its legs and still snarling. It halted 40 feet away and surveyed him curiously, with ears sharply pricked forward. The man looked down at his hands in order to locate them, and found them hanging on the end of his arms. It struck him as curious that one should have to use his eyes in order to find out where his hands were. Now this man could do only this thing, and the dog was struggling to get out of his clutches of his arms. Now this man realized that I cannot kill the dog, nor can I throttle the dog or strangle him to death, nor can I use my sheath knife in order to kill him. So the dog somehow freed himself from his clutches and stood 40 feet away, looking at him curiously. The man looked at his hands, at where his hands were, because the man could not feel the feeling of his hands. But then he needed eyes in order to see. No, his hands were beside his body only, beneath his arms. It struck him as curious that one should have to use his eyes. He began threshing his arms back and forth, beating the mittened hands against his eyes. He did this for 5 minutes violently, and his heart pumped enough blood up to the surface to put a stop to his shivering. But no sensation was aroused in the hands. He had an impression that they hung like weights on the ends of his arms. But when he tried to run the impression down, he could not find it. Now this man, he tried to again beat his hands and do the exercise back and forth in order to bring the bomb to his arms. He did this very fast, very violently in the next 5 minutes, and due to which his heart, the blood circulation in his heart increased in order to bring warmth to his body so that he could stop shivering. But no sensation occurred in his arms. It seemed as if they were heavy weights which were put at the end of his arms. Continue this in the next video. This story is too long and this video already has become of 31 minutes. So we'll continue in the next one.